Fred, did you want to make any opening remarks before Stan shares the screen and goes into the presentation?
No, I mean, I could just say that, this is something we all work very hard on. We are about to hear a presentation about not just the current contract that'll be up for a vote tonight for the collection of solid waste and recyclables, but also the challenges that face not just the city of Reading, but just about every municipality across the country because of the various economic forces and political forces that have created havoc with the industry. So this is something that was really unavoidable, but it's kind of a sign of the times. So I'll let Stan get into the presentation, and if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, everyone. This has been a group effort, and I must say that as I'm sharing the screen now, can everyone see that, please? This has been a lot of thought process into this, and we've heard some conversations earlier in terms of the length of the contract. This should solidify, and don't use that term loosely, in terms of the reasons why it is a 5-year contract. Case in point, if I may, I just want to minimize my screen, is the focus of the industry is at the bottom. You'll say that the industry has determined themselves to be far from normal. These screenshots are from what the industry is producing, not for themselves, but for the governments like ourselves and the general population. Number one, there is supply chains impacts as relates to the capital costs. We're all well familiar with that. Number two is recycling. Fred touched on that earlier, that the market is essentially dried up. And it's not necessarily just in China, it's throughout the country. There was times when other countries are accepting our recycling for a fee, and they were disposing of the product incorrectly. Number three is industry-wide challenge. The largest one, is Fred touched also, is there's billboards by JP Mascaro that are advertising starting salaries at $83,000 on a yearly basis. We'll touch on that in 1 second as well. At the bottom of the screen, that not only is there an $83,000 salary, but there's also including sometimes $5,000 to $10,000 signing bonuses. What the trend of CDL drivers is, few younger adults want to, number one, do it, and don't want to do the hours and or the difficulties in it. And we're now seeing that if you move down the gap, openings because to applicants, as we all know, and just reflecting on the city of Reading ourselves, is we have job postings that are well into a year to fulfilling.
Yeah.
Now, this is a very telling in terms of the CPI, in terms of the Northeast region of the United States, and this is something that we debated on. And if you see where the red line itself is, when the back in January of 2020, prior to the pandemic, you can see where the trending of the CPI was somewhat gradual, about a 1.5 to 2 points. When the pandemic hit to the bottoming out of into the May timeframe, you can see there was somewhat of a drop in pricing and not much rise. And you can see where it tapered off at the bottom of the yield of the curve. And that will reflect back to my driving here of July of 2020. I was paying $1.79 a gallon of gas in Temple at Sam's Club. As a case in point, this is the price of rolled steel. This price here reflects not only, as Fred referred to earlier about, and also Frank referred to about the buying of trucks. Trucks have gone from $354,000, $500,000 for the entire unit to well to $700,000, $800,000. And this is partially reflected in this cost. And we're finding now that pricing of rolled steel is under $500 a ton to now it's well above $1,800 a ton. Quickly, Fred also mentioned the comparison of the city of Reading to some of our other sister cities whom we are also engaged with. The city of Easton at 408, Allentown 375, Harrisburg 388, and Scranton is $300, trash only. Currently, the city of Reading, it is $270 a year into the end of calendar 2021. And we're proposing for $330 per year, 2022, with increase, as Fred also mentioned, increases would only go to the solid waste. And there's a little notation at the bottom, and double starred is the city of Reading is the only municipality that picks up electronics and tires at the curb. Every other municipality that's listing here has the electronics at a central location for the end user then to bring. For example, Exeter Township or Muhlenberg, you would have to then drive it to Berks County. Same with tires. We're now finding it costs the city $5 a tire. And other locations for electronics in Northampton County, it's costing anywhere from $35 to $50, depending on what the electronic device is, just to dispose of. Other municipalities that are close to us, Exeter is $396, and that's solid waste only. Anilani, $356, Malton, $310. This is some of the other items that we do. We pick up a bulk item per week. I have the electronics mixed also, and then there is then the weekly tire pickup. The city will pick up to 4 tires per week. However, I can attest that the solid waste crew spends many hours picking up tires and TVs that are just dropped off. And I think this is part of what the city of Reading and council would probably know best. But over the years, this was a way for them to pick up some of the disposed items, which is a great idea. Additionally, senior citizens, and this is on a comment you made, Jahani, prior, you would receive a 50% discount if your income level is below $30,087. One thing the city also does is special accommodations, where the city will help in certain circumstances. It has to be approved though. If a person is affirmed or whatever, we will make allowances to go to the back of a person's home, especially if that person could not get it to the curb. Now, this next point, number 3, is what Fred was alluding to. Some of the other locales, Easton, Allentown, Bethlehem, they don't pick up some of our yard waste. We termed it seasonal leaf collection and weekly yard waste. So you can actually dispose of your yard waste and the city will collect it. Internally, Fred was able to calculate the figure at $325,000 extra a year the city absorbs to pay for these services. The bid results. The bid results were based on a 5-year contract term with approximately 27,200 trash and recycling stops per week. And then on an individual basis, 800 additional recycling stops per week. Currently, we're at $2,250, which equates to $270 annually. And we will then move to 2750, which is $330 annually. This is what our costs were in 2016, 2020, and 2021. That was the 1-year extension that we were able to enforce with the Republic contract. This is a bar graph showing you where the inflation has brought us and the cost increases. Would love to have this been a lot less, but I apologize. This is just the harsh reality we are living in, and we are all seeing that. That's my slideshow. Thank you.
All right, I can't see anybody's hands, but anybody have questions for Stan at this point? Or the administration?
Yeah, this is Marcia. First of all, thank you for the detailed presentation. Will we have access to what the other bids were? Because we obviously chose due to a competitive bidding process.
Yes, and very quickly, we only received one other bid, and that was from JP Mascaro.
Okay.
They were in loose numbers, they were approximately 17% higher. We sent this bid out to Waste Management, who chose not to, Allied, and a few other people also, but we only received 2 bids, and we chose Republic.
Okay, and then when you issued the RFP, it was for a 5-year contract. Am I correct?
That is correct.
And why was that selected rather than a 2-year?
Well, the 2-year, and that goes back to, as was alluded to before, with the consultant and industry analysis. Frank made the comment that we are requiring new trucks, and a company would not bid if it's a 2-year contract, because they're not going to go out and purchase a $600,000, $700,000 truck, put a full crew in, and then have that opportunity lost by year 3.
Okay.
But it costs us way too much money.
And Stan, the reason we ask for new equipment is we don't want leaky trucks. Trucks get older, they get noisier, and they do break down. So we don't want any kind of disruption collection. So that's a requirement that we always ask for new trucks, because their lifeline is only a couple of years, maybe 5 to 7 at the most.
Right.
So we want to start out the contract with new trucks. So because they got to make such a large investment and they have to spread it out over the life of the contract, we felt we get more competitive rates by requiring a 5-year contract with 2 1-year extensions than doing a 3-year contract or 2 1-year extensions. So, we think we did better than we would have done if it was a 3-year contract.
And I have 2 more real quick questions. One, with our contract with them, will there be any requirements as far as making sure there aren't any missed sites, like performance, as far as what we expect of them? Because that's been one of the complaints in the past, or trash being dumped on the street, those type. And I know you've addressed that, but I just wanted to reinforce that, we need that to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Marcia. And I can assure you that Steve and his team have done that. And we have witnessed many, many times where the gentleman, and I'll use that in their term in the industry, is called slingers, will actually then, if something is missed into the truck, will actually take a broom and make sure it's cleaned up and disposed of properly in the back of the truck.
And the thing is, industry standards has about 1% miscollection rate. That's just standard anytime you're doing something with humans. And if we have like 28,000 customers, so the standard would be about 200 some misstops would be considered acceptable. It's a lot less than that. The solid waste staff does share the misstops with the codes, call center, and the mayor's office. So we have many people looking at it. And at most times, it's very little amount of miscollection. The big issue will become a communication. When you have holiday scheduling and inclement weather, then you have an increase of perceived potentially misstops, miscollections. Now, under the worst circumstances, if the hauler was not doing what was expected, we have a performance bond ultimately that would hold the hauler. It's like an insurance policy, security deposit. They failed to follow provide the services, then we go into the performance bond. And that's under extreme circumstances, but we do have protections in the contract to ensure that we have sufficient collection.
Okay, if I may, I'd like to add real quick, this year we picked up an extra 5,000 new trash customers. And a lot of these folks were used to getting their trash picked up at 7 a.m. and we didn't get there till 9, so they'd be calling at 8:30 and say that they were missed. A lot of the missed stops. And folks are getting used to it, and that kind of went away. But early on, we saw a lot of things like that.
Johanny?
Any other questions?
Can you-
Anybody? Go ahead, John.
Hello? Okay, I'm sorry. So what is the additional cost to the constituent? What are they going to be expecting to pay beginning 2023? Do we know more or less?
$60 additional per year, $5 per month.
So an additional $5 increase per month.
$5 per month, $60 annually.
Okay, and then, so for the next 5 years, will we be honoring what you listed on your presentation, the senior discount and the other accommodation, I think, based on I think backyard collection, et cetera? Or
Yeah.
will there be an increase there as well?
No, that is into the goodwill that the city provides to its residents.
Keep this in mind, there is a CPI increase every year. Traditionally, in the past, we have not provided that in our bid document, but as we hear a lot in the media, and the industries are very familiar with the possibility and the reality of inflation. Inflation is a reality. You'll hear more and more as we provide contracts and bidding, that inflation does affect some of the bidding process. So we have a CPI that's only capped at 3%. It's actually a little less than that, but it's 3% capped. So no matter how much inflation is for the next couple of years, $3,000 is, 3% is the ceiling. And we believe, knowing where the trending of inflation and everything else, that we'll actually we minimized the cost. I think we're keeping costs very under control. We have 5 years of a stated increase. Stated price with the CPI. The industry is very volatile right now. The trends are showing that collection expenses throughout the whole country should be going up significantly. But by locking him in a 5-year and a maximum of a 3% CPI, we'll see a lot more value as over time, as we go through our contract and you see other contracts, you'll see that we've got a pretty good value. It's never pleasant to talk about increases, and but the reality is prices have gone up, and the whole presentation that was provided by Public Works explained this national industry, why this cost is going up. But we've contained them as best as we can.
And I understand that. So I just want to reiterate, right, to the constituents that yes, there'll be an increase, but it's an increase that will be locked in for the next 5 years. Now, that means that there's
Right.
also an applicable increase to city, right? And then how will that be reflected in the budget moving forward for 2022?
Are you referring to future, or you just 2022 or 2023 on? Maybe I just trying to clarify your question. You talk about the duration of the contract.
So, no, what I'm asking, I'll repeat the question. So it'll be the same rate to the constituent for the next 5 years. We're going into a 5-year contract because we're locking in rates. That's question number one.
With the CPI increase of potentially up to 3%.
Per year or
per year.
how often?
Per year. Which
And
is
then
standard.
Okay, and then the next question was, then what does that look like? So there's a fee that is attached to a constituent, right? And then there's an additional fee that the city pays as well. Am I correct?
Are you referring, there's a base price that we pay the contract, and there's administrative fees that, to manage this program. that's added on to the bill to the customer. What we're going to be doing is, because we just got these contract bids, we will be pricing and doing a 5-year forecast of the whole program. So now that data's here, we just got these contract numbers, we're kind of just getting it out there to get approval. Rest assure you that the administration will provide a 5-year forecasting of pricing based on the criteria you're saying. But these numbers are very new, and we'll be able to provide that very soon.
So can we have that provided to us before we award the contract?
I don't think it really changes anything with the contract. I don't think that really changes anything of our relationship with the contract and what that contract costs to us. So that's something that's a finance function, but it's not something that could be probably turned around in a day or two. That requires a process. We have to wait till our audit comes out on how much money is in our fund balance. All that's taking consideration. So the soonest, and I don't want to speak of finance, I may be a little bit off here, so I'll defer to Jamar, but we wait to the audit at the end of the year to help guide us in the 5-year forecasting. So I would think probably early spring, but I may be a little bit off. So I see Jamar. I don't know, Jamar, where I'm at on that. Go ahead.
I would have,
Totally wrong.
yeah. We do have a 5-year forecast that we're building. We should be able to share that before the end of the year. I would caution not to delay the award of contract because we do want to be able to collect trash on January 1st. And a delay of award of contract would jeopardize our ability to collect trash. So I would caution against that in any way.
So the audit of the fund balance at the end of this year is not needed for you to do the 5-year forecast. Okay, I'm not an auditor. Okay, got it.
And the audit for 2020 was already done, so we're good there. The city audit for 2020.
Right, I just saw it 2021. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, Maria wanted to make a comment.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Thank
Maria.
you. Thank you. So the $5 increase in 2022 can change for the last, for the next 4 years, 23, 24, and 25, right? So the price not going to be locked. Depending on the CIP, the 3%, that was the 3% that you say, Frank?
Yes, it's 3%, and there is a threshold of a 0.75. So it's in the contract terms and conditions for you to read then, Maria.
Yes, so that is the price is not going to be locked for 5 years.
Can I please clarify? Okay, our contractual per household cost is fixed. We separately put forward an ordinance that sets the rates for our constituents. That will be coming forward separately next month to be approved by council. So that rate is subject to potentially change annually.
Okay.
We're not looking to change it annually, but it is subject to annual review. Yes, that is the answer to your question.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any additional questions regarding the trash contract?
Yeah, Jeff, it's Lucy and I have some questions. Thank you to Frank. I put a comment there in the chat because I just wanted that reiterated in terms of the preparation of the projections, after the 5 years. So that's critical. And I think in the presentation, Stan, thank you. It seemed pretty clear that I'd heard overwhelming concern on, haulers not taking certain items and being confused. And it seems like this is pretty comprehensive in terms of pretty much all items will be collected. Is that accurate? An accurate understanding of what people can be expecting?
That is correct. What we do not take are the solids, the batteries, and the like, where there's a specific disposal. One thing we need to guard against is if we start seeing a set of 4 tires in front of a resident once a week, we know that there's some other issues, and we know there's this probably a business that's disposing of their tires differently than they should be. That's, but then again, I do want to say this, that Steve and the team do pick up electronics when they see them on the side of the road and or tires and or illegal trash. That is part, is what Frank said as well, becomes of what the city's due diligence and the Clean City initiatives we have in place.
Yeah, I don't want to see that remediation, creep up again. I think that was one of the reasons why we looked forward to having a Clean City initiative. So, I caution that in terms of maybe it could be countered by a good campaign and literacy on, really in good timing. This is a great time the next 5 years to kind of reach out and just re-educate and connect with the population. And I guess, there's Clean City coordinators and staffing and being put in place to, Steve, really kind of help you reach out and touch base with everybody. I think that's going to be critical. I think that's a really critical piece, so that we don't see the dumping and well, I didn't know. Instead, we get phone calls or they know that there's a point person or somebody to ask prior to disposing tires beyond what's allowed per person or per house or per resident. So I know exactly what you're talking about. The other question that I had is that I know by special exception that's approved, there would be some rear collection. And I think that most of the other collection is set forth for that front collection or street front collection. Is that correct? Or has that been considered or addressed in that, rear collection overall or in certain areas or routes could also be part of this new approach to the Clean City Initiative in the next 5 years?
If I may on that, Lucine, and Frank and Steve, please weigh in, is a lot of areas of the city, the rear collection would be specifically through private alleys. And for the trucks to make it in through some of the smaller narrow alleys is it's very difficult. And especially in inclement weather and or the snowstorm, it's just it's not necessarily that it's easier. It's just more consistent to do it into the front of the property. We have specific routes and the specific number of trucks on the road. To be diverted through their path can get quite difficult.
Okay. Real quick to chime in, out of 26,444 trash customers we have currently, we only have 95 folks on special accommodation. So that's not too bad. And we didn't anticipate it climbing too much higher. We look at each case one at a time. A lot of times, you need to have a disability or something like that. But there's other cases where we've got folks in the middle of the block that just can't get it out front for whatever reason. So we're more than fair about it.
And if I may, Lucine, your point to education, the previous consultant made a recommendation through the RFP that the contractor would then educate the populace. I think we have a much better, closer, better conversations with the school district, with all the churches, with all the other groups, that we have a better outreach that works so much better. Steve did not want to, Frank and Fred and administration, let someone else take care of what our job is supposed to be.
I'm sorry, just to clarify there, you said that was reflected in the contract or it's not?
We did not allow that. We want to do that.
You did not. Okay. So it's not in the contract. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any additional questions, anybody? Relative to the contract? All right, if not, thank you guys for the update. And do we say that's up for vote tonight or no?
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Oh, go ahead, Lucy.
One question, I couldn't unmute myself fast enough. Are trash receptacles part of the contract or consideration in the next 5 years? I know we were able to have recycling containers. Now that we're moving into a citywide collection, have we considered actual trash containers as well?
So, Councilor, that's one of those things that drives up the cost of the bid sky high.
Yeah.
And to the best of my knowledge, we took that out of this bid so that we get lower bids in this time around. But Stan or Steve, please speak with more intelligence than me.
That's pretty accurate. We have nothing that we worked on with any of the haulers as far as trash receptacles, and we do our recycling bins internally, primarily through grant money.
Agreed. There was one point that we did not allow in this contract, which was inserted before, which why it was rejected, was RFID tags were supposed to be on individual receptacles, and that if they would blow away, they knew where they were, and that all of a sudden became a very expensive endeavor and very complicated, and it just did not work. So this, Steve and Jamar are correct.
Council President, this is for award of contract tonight, to answer your question.
Okay, thanks, Jamar. Are there any additional questions, anybody?
Jeff, just looking at the agenda, I believe it's being introduced tonight or not?
No,
So-
it's a contract. It's on for approval.
It's on for approval under resolutions. Okay.
Are you guys prepared to vote on it this evening, or do you need more time? All right, not hearing it.
Well, do we have more time?
I would like more time.
Do we have more time based on what's needed?
Well, we always have time. Stan, Abe, there's no pressing deadline. We have another 2 weeks.
I believe we do, yes.
Yeah, we have to have time. Yep.
It's actually 3 weeks.
Fine, whatever, 3 weeks. Okay, so we'll table it for tonight, and then we'll get to it in 3 weeks. All right, we're going to move on to the next item, review budget adjustments. Who's going to lead the way on that topic? Marcia, Jamar?
I would prefer Jamar do. I'm really losing my voice for this evening. And thank you, Jamar, for uploading the revised budget on the city website.
Sorry. Thank you, Marcia. And thank you, Jeff. Based on recommendations from the auditor's report and in consultation with the city controller, we did make adjustments to the revenues, particularly around earned income tax prior, real estate transfer tax, and business privilege tax. This has brought the use of fund balance down to $2,561,000, as you can see here on the summary tab. That number was previously about 2.8 million, I believe, last week. So we've accounted for all of those adjustments, as well as we've created a new section under Public Works to account for our downtown commercial corridor activities. Apologies, I don't want your head to spin. That division is now number 54 under Public Works. Again, it's labeled Downtown Commercial Corridor. It's in the updated PDF of the budget that's on the website today. That accounts for one full-time employee, 4 part-time ambassadors, bringing back the ambassador program, consulting services to help with additional cleanups, contracted services, some events or programming that's labeled a miscellaneous expense. And then if needed, we'll account for fringe and OPEB benefit costs. The other major budget adjustment I should bring your attention to, with the permission of the managing director under the finance department, we had a project manager position, and we were able to secure a candidate for that position, but we needed to bump the salary up to 71,000 for that position in order to bring that person on in the new year. This project manager will help us, one, with the new accounting system, Munis, that we council approved at the beginning of this year, and we're in the middle of implementation on. We also hope that this position will help us across the organization more broadly as a city to get a lot more of our projects started and off the ground. Those are the significant budget adjustments. Oh, I'm sorry. Those are the significant budget adjustments we've made within the last week of our the last time we met for a budget review. If there are any questions, I'm open, and I believe there are some additional requests that have still yet to come in as well. Last thing, I'm sorry, before we get to questions, in terms of solid waste, we did also update Fund 54, the Solid Waste Fund, to account for the new solid waste and recycling collection fees. And they are here on row 327, contracted services for recycling. That covers the hauler. And then contracted services for trash, row 350, that accounts for solid waste hauling by our contract. And with that, I'll open up the box so I can see everyone's face.
Any questions, anybody?
Maria.
Yes, I made a request for a part-time position in the audit department that has been granted or not, or that will be granted or not.
Well, hold on. Council already requested that that be added in. Jamar, was that added? Has that been added in?
So give me a half a second, please, Council President. Yeah, it's there, Maria. Row 83.
Okay. I was looking the position ordinance on the city website probably, and I think a lot, and we can talk about this, Jamar, maybe tomorrow. I think a little changes need to be made, a few changes. So
I'll double check and make sure it's on the position ordinance, but it is there on the summary. It says part-time wages under city auditor 19.5.
okay.
All right. Any
Thank you.
additional questions, council members?
Yes, Jeff, it's Lucine. I have my hand up.
Go ahead, Lucy.
So I want to thank Jamar for giving me some time to meet and just run through some things. I do have additional items that I'll be presenting, but this evening I'd just like to ask about two. The first is the Schlegel Park pool. If we can take a look at that, I want to have a justification. I think it's $125,000 that I saw in the line item, but I have not, I'm not clear as to what that amount is covering and the status of that project. I think it's a critical project that we need to address and ensure that the appropriate funding is in place and that construction schedule is succinct so that that pool can be open and ready to go. I know it might sound crazy talking about it right now, but I think this is the right time to be talking about it. So if the Public Works, whoever would like to respond to that, please don't feel obligated to do that at this moment. But that's something I'd like clarified and an update and justification of $125,000 with the issues we were seeing on that project.
Yeah, I think that's something we could get an update in the coming weeks, Lucine.
Okay.
For sure.
And from Stan, I guess the update would come from Stan.
Well, whoever they prefer.
Is that okay? So the other thing that I would like to address right now is really kind of the potential of the grants that that are outstanding. It's unfortunate if and when the city has to send back any money at all, right? And we never, ever want to do that. So I'm not asking for a full schedule of all the grants that we have and their cycles, but really trying to ensure that with the new grants coordinator, that, that the use of those funds is executed, we're not returning money, and that those grants don't actually become like expenditures for the city. And there's nothing really specific I'm trying to target there, because I know there's a handful of grants, that are out there, and the city has received multiple awards, and thankfully we continue to receive multiple awards. We just received another award for phase 2 of the multimodal project for the 18th Wonder, which is tremendous, but it does us no good as a city and financially if we are not implementing and drawing down appropriately. And certainly we never want to send that money back. So I just want to be assured that we have good management in place and that we are paying close attention in the transition of that position to make sure that those funds are being expended in a timely fashion.
I couldn't agree more, Counselor. I meet with the grants coordinator regularly. And make no mistake, our new project manager in finance, at least, is going to have no shortage of work to get done as soon as they start. And it's specifically the follow-up on at least 9 grants that are currently on my radar to make sure we get spent by the end of 2022 when all of those, the 9 awards that are on my radar are up for exploration.
Jamar, I appreciate that, because nine awards, in addition to ARPA, in addition to exiting Act 47. I mean, these are all components that, looking ahead, have to be managed with capacity and financial tenacity. And what we want to do is make sure the city is always set up for success.
Absolutely.
All right, any additional comments regarding the budget revisions?
Jeff? Can
Go
you hear me?
ahead.
Yes, so I had sent out a pretty lengthy email regarding some questions and concerns and things that I just observed throughout the budget. However, I do want to bring up if there is an opportunity or possibility to allocate some funding to the Youth Commission. I know there was a time when there was a gun violence prevention grant application that our state rep Manny Guzman was advertising, and some local organizations actually applied and were awarded. And I know there was an opportunity for the city to apply. I'm not sure if we ever did, but the Youth Commission is getting a lot of information. There's organizations that are reaching out that want to help, that want to train, implement programming to reduce and prevent gun violence. Also, I would like to see on the budget, especially in the revenue section, what Lucine was speaking of. Can it be more specific? Like the grants, because it just says grants and gifts. So wherever there's money allocated, it'd be nice for there to be like a title of what it is or which department it's being awarded to.
So we can do a grant review. I welcome that to be added as a CAL item or even a legislative meeting item. I caution against trying to put all of that data into the budget, because then it becomes a multi-100-page document, not just a couple dozen page document. I think we're up to 76 pages already. So yeah, that's kind of where I fall on that one, Counselor.
I just think that it might just help with checks and balances, and if we're all working together as a team, we can kind of like just help stay on task, so that, as Lucine emphasized, we don't return money.
Jeff, this is Marcia. I have a comment. Are you done, Johanny? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am, go for it. Thank you.
Okay. And I think what's interesting as we look at our role as city councilors, it's for the administration to monitor the expenditure of funds, to have their finger on the pulse, working with the auditor to know where we stand. However, I think we need to have a process where the council is updated about these things because we hear from the community. So I would like to be able to, as we reorganize for the next council coming in, that we look up the setup of committees, how we're scheduling our committees of the whole, and really build into regularly scheduled updates for those kinds of things that concern us. So we don't need to take on everything at budget time when there's questions that probably need to be asked before then.
The last thing I would say, Councilor Cepeda Freitas, regarding the PCCD grant for gun violence prevention, respectfully, we just can't do everything. That did hit our radar. We discussed it internally. We just didn't have someone that could do that work, so we did not apply for it.
All right, any additional questions regarding the budget revisions?
Council President, this is Frank. I just put into the chat, the administration does have a few additional budget adjustment items in regards to the commercial corridor. Sydney Kastner, who is a panelist who's on this call, is available to present, and Jamar has some line items that I don't know if you have access to that, Jamar, if you can put that on the screen. And we can explain, is that, I'm not able to see that. Okay, is that?
Yeah, how long a review is this, Frank? Because we have to get into our.
It's only a few items, budget items, a few line items, and it's strictly a budgetary information session today. It's not to get into what we do downtown. It's strictly a budgetary.
Yeah, but I mean, how much time are you going to need to go through them? Because we
5 minutes.
All right.
So what you see on the screen is a downtown commercial corridor, and Cindy Kastner, our downtown coordinator, can elaborate on what these items are. Some of these expenses are current expenses that we've already incurred this year, but reclassified into a separate fund, into a commercial corridor fund, and some are new expenses, but she's gonna go over this really, really briefly on what these expenses are, and then what revenues are existing to pay for it. So Cindy, are you available? Are you able to elaborate for a moment or two?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I can't see the screen as well, so I wasn't sure. Okay, great. So if you just want to elaborate on what this is, and like I said, we're really just focusing on the budgetary functionality tonight, and we can explain more about downtown strategy at another meeting.
So what you see is basically the list that Jamar presented to you earlier. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions, but I just want to quickly tell you that with regard to the ambassadors, we've had a lot of comments about longer hours for ambassadors. People want that extra safety factor when they're going to events or leaving work. So that number that you see would reflect ambassadors and stretching them out as well for 12 hours a day. It would be 2 separate shifts, and we would cover 12 hours. And then the beautification would be the pots and the flowers, plants. I think everyone has seen what things look like on Penn Street right now. The additional cleanup is money that we would utilize for Hope Rescue, other entities who would come in to help us do some cleanup. The events would be to help us get started with some events. Currently, we ran some events on a grant that we received from Community Foundation, but that money there would sort of be the seed money. Contracted services would be to help us get all these events off the ground. Very often we need someone who can bring specific talent in or help with the parade or any of the other various things that we're doing. So those are the numbers in front of you. This is really the basic operational cost and the minimal amount that the city will have to invest. In addition to this, we hope to get some grant funds, and I'll be happy to answer any questions real quickly if anyone has them.
And just to weigh in, how we pay for this is we've already had previously allocated $200,000 for DID and $66,000 for the public-private partnership in the past. So that's $266,000 that's just getting reallocated over to the commercial corridor program. The additional $166,000 is being paid for from the savings and, the recommendations from our city auditor, who made recommendations last week on revenue projections. So those increased revenue projections, the beneficiary of this is to pay for some of the budgeting for the commercial corridor. So as Cindy has shared, this is basic operation costs. It's not reflective of our total financial commitment to downtown. And pretty much there's some expansion of services on the times the ambassadors and cleanup. But like I say, for today's purposes, it's really a budget functionary conversation. And so you see that we're capitalizing everything in one separate fund. In the previously, we would draw from different departments of different funds. So as we build upon this, we have a baseline to start with.
All right, council, any questions just on the budget line items themselves, without getting into the details of, what's going to happen downtown? We'll have an opportunity to do that. Now, you do have the right to still ask the questions if you need them now. So,
Yeah, I have a quick question. Because it sounds like, so when I think of ambassadors, I think of someone who's greeting, who's providing guidance, direction, and things of the sort. Do we need security guards then for people who feel unsafe and feel the need to be escorted?
So basically, we're calling them ambassadors only because that's what, that was sort of the label that they had before. But yes, it really would be more of a clean and safe approach. It would be someone who will help keep things clean downtown, but really they are there to assist with folks leaving work when it's dark. They want someone to make sure they get to their car just as they used to. That is the one comment I've heard the most of since I have started with the downtown, is that is the one thing folks say they really miss, is having someone to call when they're walking out of their office at 9 o'clock at night and they're a little leery about walking by themselves.
all right, any additional comments, anyone?
Yes, Jeff, it's Lucine.
Yeah.
So, I want to commend Cindy, for, first of all, for the parade that just happened, but also for the services that she's been coordinating and this presentation, because, if we recall, this authority that had been in place that, council actually decided to not reauthorize was operating with about $1 million budget annually, which was grossly underfunded. And in addition to that, they didn't have the capacity that they needed. Right now we're looking at a proposed $428,000. That's not even coming close to half of what was in place and needed, where the services weren't being evaluated. So, I have some big questions, because now this responsibility has fallen on the administration. $428,000 isn't enough to really do what needs to be done. And now it is, the responsibility of the administration, in addition to public works and police. I don't know where that money is going to be coming from. And, it needs to be addressed. Perhaps it will be addressed when you talk about the Downtown Plus strategic plan, where you're looking at, the assessments, although it seems that, they were unpopular, were bringing in a subsequent amount of funding to support the services that were needed or that we're talking about right now. And the development work that was critical. So as an authority, there was the ability for all of that to be done. I think too that I'd like to see not just here salaries, part-time wages, but also what are we really expending through police and public works to make up for the cost of where we don't have that authority in place anymore for those services. And I caution, these part-time wages of ambassadors, I think we really need to make sure that we have individuals that have the skill sets that are providing the services that we need to. And, you know, I've been very clear that, you know, this position of a downtown coordinator is, you know, being put in with another full-time position of public properties. I don't know how much longer that could be justified because that's a lot of work for an individual. So those are my concerns when we're looking at, you know, adjustments to the budget concerning downtown at this time.
Yeah, those are all good questions, Lucine. I don't think we can get into all of them tonight only because of our timeline, but we'll hopefully have an opportunity when we're wrapping up Downtown Plus and talking about the downtown core overall to really get into the comprehensive strategy, including all the funding, as you said. A lot of questions about how we're going to do it. So, well,
Jeff, when do we anticipate that we'll be having those conversations? Because, you know, this is being sometime soon. Budget, and then, you know, if we don't have those conversations before we need to approve this, then how do we understand how to approach?
Well, this is just the as is. The 2B will obviously be different. So we can't have all the information at this time, but we'll have an opportunity to do a deeper dive into downtown, and then we can realign the numbers as we had to. At this point, these are the bare minimums, right? I mean, these are enough to get by for now. It's not our permanent solution, but it's enough to keep Cindy and her team focused on keeping the core essential services going until we have a much more refined and well-funded process, whatever that'll look like. So we've got to deal with the cards we have in front of us for the moment. And I'm just trying to keep us focused here this evening, Lucine, because we have a limited amount of time. So I would say post-budget, you know, we do have a preliminary plan from Downtown Plus. It's being reviewed by the administration. We're going to have an opportunity to dive deeper in. As soon as we're done with the budget, hopefully we can get more hands around downtown.
Jeff, this is Marcia. I just want to make a process comment. You keep saying we have a limited amount of time. This is city business and we need to make the time. We're all here on a city.
Marcia, I'm referring to this evening. That's all.
Why do we have a limited amount of time? There are times that we have council meetings that have gone till 9 o'clock. If we need to discuss
all right, well, then let's have the discussion. Okay, never mind. I'm wrong. Let's talk about downtown for 40 minutes. Continue the discussion. I think the administration suggested they weren't ready to talk about all these details that we could get into just the budget. So let's go. We'll keep going.
No, you don't understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is.
I do, Marcia, but somewhere we have to contain it. We have to organize it. So I'm just trying to keep us on track.
Please not interrupt me and let me finish what I'm saying. Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
What I want to say is that we at least need a definite, as was asked by Lucine, a definite period of time that we are going to discuss this. And it may need to be before. We obviously can't do a deep dive tonight, but we need to have a commitment of when that's going to be. That could come by next Monday, but I just want to have something on the time frame. And I see Johanny put in the chat. Let's schedule a time. So that's all I'm asking for.
And again, as I stated, the administration told us about 2 weeks ago, they've got the preliminary draft, they're reviewing it. I don't know if they're prepared this evening or not to give us a distinct timeline. So we'll certainly queue them up to see if they're ready to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Council President, Chief Stout.
Yeah, Chief, before you go, I need to hear back from the administration on this timeline. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Abe, Jamal, anybody prepared to talk about a timeline to review the downtown plan? I'm assuming it's a couple weeks out, but I don't want to speak for you guys. Hello? Abe or Jamal?
Oh, so I'll have to defer to Abe on that one. I did make the budget adjustments already to the best of my understanding of what was desired.
No, we're talking about a review of the downtown plan. Is Abe on right now? Or
Yes,
Jamal?
I'm on. Yes, the review of the downtown plan is something that we started with conversations last week in terms of the budget itself. and the responsibilities. And we have decided, the mayor and I have decided that Cindy is going to take that role on full time and would have to abandon the property position, the property management position. There's no way, to Lucine's point, that one person could do both roles on a full-time basis. So what I'd like to do is have a follow-up meeting next week. We have ample time to discuss this prior to the next meeting.
Yeah, and the question here was more around when will the administration be done reviewing the preliminary draft of the downtown plan so we can start strategizing together? I know you just got it a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, we got it a couple of weeks ago, and it's very voluminous. It's over 700 pages, and we're still pouring through it. So again, we're going to have that discussion next week.
Okay. All right. So anything, I was going to call you separately to see if we could get that sent out to everybody. I don't know if it's something that could be put out preliminarily just to the council members and if it could go out electronically, but I'll touch base with you tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you.
Council, any more questions? So a week or two, Abe, is what you're saying on the downtown plan?
That is correct.
All right. Any other questions regarding the downtown plan? Is that all right, Marcia? Are we good to go until they're ready?
Yeah, I just wanted to have a definite time.
All right. Okay, anything else on this item on the agenda? Budget adjustment.
Yes, Chief Stout again.
Go ahead,
I
Chief.
may.
I apologize. Go ahead.
No problem. I don't mind waiting. I just have two recommendations, and I apologize for the late timing, but as you might have seen in the chat room I put forth, there's two projects that were included in the 2021 CIP that due to supply chain issues are going to be delayed into 2022. So we need to move the 2021 CIP funds for them to 2022. One of them would be $700,000 under fire in the CIP for the tower purchase, which was approved in 2020 and half of it was paid up front. This is being delayed. It was due like late this year, but due to supply chain issues, won't be coming till February, if not a little later in 2022. So I would recommend that them funds be moved that way. And the other one is under Riverside, and Stan and I talked about it for the Riverside. It's $100,000 listed under public properties there. And this is for a generator. Stan just got notice recently that due to supply chain issues, this won't be coming till May or June of 2022. So if we could look to move the funds for them two projects into the 2022 CIP, please.
All right, are those adjustments, Jamar, you can have presented to us before the final draft, is that correct?
That is correct.
Council, I don't foresee any problems with that. Does anybody have any concerns with that? Just moving some line items around for manageability.
What was the dollar amount on that, Chief?
On the, which one, the Riverside Station?
The generator, yeah.
Yeah, it's $100,000 budgeted, even though the amount of the project was like 86,000 or something. I believe there may already been a purchase order that we'll have to cancel out and all and redo in 22 then.
So that's the one that was labeled station repairs under public property?
It's under public properties. I believe it's listed as Riverside Fire Station upgrades or something like that. If you bring up that line.
I got it. I'm making
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everybody. If we don't have any additional items under budget adjustments, I'm going to move on to the agenda review. Give me just one
Council
sec.
President, may I just make one quick comment?
Sure, man.
Ann Rugas, we've received pricing back for the Reading Main Public Library, the HVAC upgrades, and we're reviewing the bids as we speak. One thing will hold true though, is there are mechanicals that will not be delivered till well after Labor Day of 2022 because of supply chain issues. Well, I just want to forewarn council that we will be seeing this more and more. Thank you.
But Stan, can you finish the rest of that? So that project, main library HVAC was budgeted at 350,000. And how
Correct.
did the bids come back?
We're reviewing the bids now. The low bid, the apparent low bidder, whom has not been awarded yet, was nearly $600,000 for the project.
So, council, that's another one that's going to need to increase for 2022 is the HVAC at the library based on current market forces.
All right, anything else before we get into the agenda review? Because I know we have to do a quick executive session before we go into our regular meeting, so. If there's nothing else, let me try to step through the agenda. Okay, the first item we have this evening is, we're gonna have, is it Robia Thomas from Union Baptist Church?
Hope so.
Yeah, we have, yeah, okay. No proclamations this evening. Anybody scheduled for public comment, Linda?
I have one written submission. It's on non-agenda. I emailed that out about 4:45. Yes, 4:45.
All right. Does somebody want to read that tonight?
Jeff, I have no voice, so someone else is going to have to take over reading.
All right, Linda can read it. That's fine. That's good. Okay. All right, and then we'll move on to the approval of agenda and minutes. We got a couple consent agenda items. The first one is an award of contract to Boyle Construction for the McKnight and Spring Firehouse Engineering and Construction Management in the amount of $48,000. Any comments or questions on that? All right, if not, the next item on the consent agenda is an awarded contract for the ARPA Grants Management Accounting and Compliance Project to whoever Axelrod in Harrisburg for $150,000, which will be paid in 2022, and $100,000 will be budgeted annually as an ongoing cost. The award is based on the hourly rate, not a specific dollar amount. The hourly rate is $325 an hour and $215 for a manager. Any comments or questions on that? Jamar, did you want to give us a real brief recap?
Thank you, Council President. We received 12 bids on the grants management service. We had national firms like BDO that you'll see commercials for, Ernst & Young, Baker Tilly. Ultimately, the committee decided a Pennsylvania-based firm would better understand our needs, as well as have the flexibility to be able to come on site as needed. We found in some of the bids from the national firms, they weren't as willing to travel. It was just remote sessions. And especially as we get to the point of doing sub-grant or sub-recipient awards, we would want the consultant to be able to come out and do technical assistance briefings for our community-based organizations that we hope to be able to access this funding in the future. So with that, we went with Zelenkovsk Axelrod, based out of Harrisburg.
All right, any comments or questions, anybody regarding that award of contract?
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah.
That seems like an outrageous amount of money. I don't know what everyone thinks. And again, I'm not familiar with how these contracts operate, but what are other municipalities doing and what are they paying?
Counselor, we had bids come back for $6 million. We had bids come back for $2 million. This was the among the most competitive of what we received. Can't really speak a lot to what other municipalities are doing, but just about every municipality in the country, particularly directed entitlements like us, are awarding contracts in these ranges.
Jamar, can you just give everybody an idea what the return of that investment will look like?
In terms of?
Whatever they're going to accomplish for us.
Okay, just 1 second. Let me pull up the agenda.
I think that's a little more helpful for people because it is a lot of money and people are just trying to understand what are we going to be getting for that kind of money.
Okay, just one moment, please.
The agenda memo is on page 17.
Thank you, Linda. It's 88-page document. Okay, they're going to assist with the review of grant requirements, guidance, and interpretation of the guidelines in accordance with the uniform guidance referencing to CFR, that is the federal regulation for the American Rescue Plan funding. They will assist with control procedures. They will assist with reporting, developing guidelines and procedures. So specifically a sub-grant application and process for reviewing those applications, as I mentioned. They will help with technical assistance. As I've spoken to before, we want community-based organizations to be able to access this funding, but there are reporting requirements with any federal funding, and we want to make sure that we won't disadvantage a potential community-based organization by giving them funding that they don't know how to spend. Also, they'll be charged with risk assessment, mitigating against any potential fraud, making sure that if there are any updates to the guidelines that the city remains in compliance, that we perform all necessary audits of funding as needed.
All right, so basically, we're getting their expertise, Johanny. If we, it's a good question, but if we hired somebody for $150,000 a year, they're not going to be as versed as this organization in helping us manage these ARP funds. So I do understand the contract a little better now, but it's a good question because there's a lot of money, but we don't want to be tripping over these dollars.
And we don't want to mess anything up. And that's what we're paying them for.
It's a good question, though. It's a lot of money.
Yes.
Go ahead, Johnny.
And I get it, and but it almost sounds like, I mean, the ARP fund is the first time ever fund that the government has issued, correct? So it's like, I wonder why it just costs so much if this organization or any other, for that matter, has never managed these type of funds. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like
but then
sometimes
what's going to
people-
happen, Johanny, they're going to manage it for many, many communities. They're going to get deeply involved with it. They're going to know it kind of intimately. So they're putting their professional experience and doing a deep, deep, deep dive so that they can dot all the I's and cross the T's for many organizations, which will make them better at it than we could be as a standalone organization. Does it make sense?
Yeah, this is Marcia. Just wanted to make a comment because it's a really good question. But these organizations, and I did some research into them to see what their capacities were. This is critical money to be managed correctly. And if you have experience with federal funds and large federal grants, it doesn't matter whether it's ARP or another kind of source of funding, it's all going to follow the same rules. The important thing is to have a firm there that can keep us abreast of what's going on, work with the community-based organizations, and make sure that we spend that money to its full potential. So even though I understand it sounds like a lot of money, especially when you look at their hourly wages, I understand why we need to invest in that to protect the dollars.
All right, any additional questions on this issue? All right, the next item on the consent agenda is an award of contract for the Buttonwood Gateway Engineering Project to McTish, Kunkel and Associates. The fees for this part of the project will be paid from account code blah, blah, blah. I'm not reading all those. The total amount to be incurred is $225,508 over 2 years. These payments will be broken down into $15,000 for 2021 and $210,508 for 2022. Any comments or questions on this contract? Can somebody give us at least a brief overview of exactly what this contract is for?
Councilman Waltman, I can. This project is, you can see it's well under construction now across from the former grocery store on Buttonwood. It is for the city to install stormwater remediation through the streets. This was part of the city's CIP as it was entered in 2018. The reason it did not get awarded the previous years because the scope of work to the project changed considerably, and to also encompass an additional block. Additionally, we have some sidewalks and some other work, and probably most importantly, McNish Conkle will act as a project manager for us to look at the site. Once design's created and bid out successfully, McNish Conkle will also be there to help us to ensure the project is done correctly.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions for Stan?
Johanny here. Is this account code, is this considered a capital improvement project? What account
Yes,
code
it
is
is.
that?
This is part of the city's CIP. That is correct.
Thank you, Stan.
All right, the next item under the award of contract is for Bernhard Dam Spillway Removal Project to Flyway Construction of Mount Joy, PA, at the cost of $89,400. It's obviously something we've been waiting on for a long time. Any comments or questions on that contract? All right, if not, we're going to pull the next item, the award of contract. We're going to remove that. Make sure I do that during the agenda review, please. I don't want to forget. And we'll vote on that in 3 weeks. Administrative report. I don't know who's going to be here this evening for the administrative report. I know Abe had a little bit of emergency. So I don't know, Frank or
Council President, I'm prepared to provide the administrative report this evening.
All right, then we'll have a report from our auditor. We don't have anything as relates to boards, authorities, or commissions, I'm sorry. And then we're going to ordinances for final passage. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 this evening. The first one is Bill 75. I've been asked to see if we could table that at least one more time. Is that correct, Frank?
That's correct. And the reason, just so for council to understand, we're still waiting for some clarification from the solicitor, from the pension board, some minor things that have to get some clarification. We hope to have those answers for the next meeting.
All right, so we'll table that one more time, and then we'll go to Bill 82-2021.
Excuse me, Jeff. The position ordinance, the ordinance for the 2022 budget for position ordinance. I know some adjustment need to be made there, so.
Yeah, we're not voting on that this evening, Maria.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, the next bill 82-2021, authorizing a budget transfer of $30,000 from finance to the mayor's office for the purchase of a car for the mayor.
Council President, the administration would like to withdraw that request. And we can explain now or later why we would like to withdraw that request. Based on that, we found a suitable vehicle currently in the fleet that hasn't been utilized much, so we're able to utilize that vehicle. So, and maybe the Public Works Director could maybe elaborate upon that, but there's no need for us to take action on Bill 82 to transfer any funds. So we're withdrawing from that. So we plan to use an existing vehicle from the fleet.
All right, so we'll withdraw that from the agenda. All right, the next item is Bill 83-20.
Jeff, I have a question.
Yep.
Do we have a full list of how vehicles are designated and assigned to office holders? Because generally, over the years, the mayor did not use a personal vehicle, just as all of us do, just as county commissioners do. I'm not sure when all this came about that there was this, whether it's a new vehicle or one already in fleet, that the office of the mayor gets a vehicle. Do we have an assigned list of vehicles?
Anybody's prepared to answer that this evening? We can certainly ask for a follow-up on it.
So I'll just get clarification on the request. Are we asking, is the request a list of all vehicles, who they're assigned to, or just the elected official?
Yes, I think that's something we should
Okay.
have. And I also think there should be a consideration I truly am not in favor of any of the non-elected office holders having access to a vehicle. However, I do believe we could implement a policy of mileage being approved through the auditor's office for those duties we do in the official capacities in which we serve. So I do believe we as a council, if we're going to be from the true fiduciary stewards of the city, to keep that in mind. We came into public service, obviously not looking at earning huge amounts of money, particularly those of us who have sat here for years at $5,000 a year. But I truly don't believe in a city that has the poverty rate the city has at any of the sitting in elected positions should be using a city vehicle or using city fuel money for our ability to traverse in a city that is under 10 square miles in size. So two things: one, a list, and two, to start developing a policy that will honor council in terms of remuneration for mileage traveled under acceptable state mileage accommodation.
All right, well, that's something, once we get the list done and we can have a meeting, we can talk about policy, all right?
Well, and also one other thing, the idea of getting governators in all city vehicles as the county does. It's one thing they do right. So that shows you where the vehicle is traveling, who's using it, who signs it out.
Yeah, okay, we can talk about that during.
No, we need to do it.
Okay, so schedule the time. We'll work with Frank to get the list. We'll schedule the time on the agenda and we'll review it. Okay.
And we need as a council to work together on working with the administration to develop that policy. I think it's absolutely incredibly important as we exit Act 47.
We could form a legislative committee, a subcommittee, and report back.
Let's do that.
We'll be
That's a
glad.
good idea.
Council President, do you want me to work with Councilman Reed and then we could put like a little ad hoc committee and come back? Or just to get things moving? Or
I would absolutely love it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll work with Councilman Reed.
And I'd ask Marcia to be a part of it because she's familiar with these practices.
I'm just going to say, because my whole career has been working for a government or different government agencies, I'm really familiar with policies, the auditing practices that are required when you are using a government-owned vehicle. So, we want to be consistent with what the best practices are.
And when I briefly worked for the county several years back, that was a real good experience for me to see how they handled it. It's one thing they do well.
All right. If there's no other comments on that, I want to keep moving on here, guys. The next item is Bill number 84, 2021, authorizing the addition of the agency fund line item in the amount of $25,000 for the downtown holiday related costs. I believe that was discussed in pretty good detail 2 weeks ago, but does anybody have any additional comments or questions on that?
I do, Jeff. I'm concerned why this is on here when I vividly recollect several months ago when the topic was brought up about the Pottinger Trust Fund and that its intended use was exclusively for charity. And I remember the auditor stating, I'm sorry, let me finish. I
skipped that ordinance. I'm sorry, before you go, I skipped that, but let me just read that real quick. Authorizing the budget transfer of $12,000 from the mayor's office to reimburse the Pottinger Trust Fund to cover the gun buyback program. Go ahead, Joanna. I'm sorry.
Right. I remember the auditor specifically stating that that money could not be used for the gun buyback program, but it appears like it was utilized anyway. And here we are now having to reimburse that fund. I want to know why.
It's Councilwoman. It's my understanding that when the city auditor brought it up to our attention, it was already allocated from the Pottinger Trust Fund. So, city auditor, she could speak better to this, but I believe what she did was she actually spoke with the trustee of the account to get more clarification, help guide the administration on what can be used. And I believe it's strictly a charitable, which is a 501c3 entity, and based on a situation of need. But I'll let the city auditor, if you would like to elaborate on your findings, but her findings and her guidance leads us moving forward. So we're doing some accounting reclassification cleanup, but I'll refer to the city auditor.
with all due respect, Maria was very specific and elaborate in her explanation the first time when it was stated that when we asked the question about what funding we were going to use for the gun buyback program, she was very clear and very specific that it could not, the Pottinger Fund could not be used for the gun buyback. But I guess it had already been used, I guess is what took place already. And now we have to fix it.
And it's just really an accounting function of reclassifying the funds. But I will defer to our city auditor, so I don't want to speak on her behalf. So she's able to elaborate on the conversation.
Yes, Johanna is correct. I made that pretty clear that the Mr. Pottinger Trust Fund cannot be used for unless it is for charitable contribution. It was not able, the administration was not able to use those funds for the buyback program. We had to check to see when the money was allocated to that account. So I don't have the information in front of me right now, but I believe I sent you, let me check something real quick.
Right, the purpose of this is to reallocate it back into the fund.
so
We have
this
to
is
take action.
Yeah, that's right. So this is correcting all that. So
It's over $10,000, so we have to come to the body, but we would have done it sooner. But that's the whole purpose of this action, is to reclassify it and replenish the fund.
all right. Are there any other comments on this right now? All right. Now I skipped. So the final ordinance is authorizing the addition of an agency fund line item in the amount of $25,000 for the downtown holiday related cost. Any comments on that?
Yes, I have a question. What are those costs for? I believe when I heard last meeting or the meeting before that we were receiving donations for the downtown and that they had already exceeded the expenditures. Maybe I heard that incorrectly. So can you justify what the $25,000 is? Is it 25? I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda pulled up.
I agree. Questioning.
Let's see. Yes, 25. Can you justify the expense of the $25,000?
It will, if Cindy Cash is available, I'm not, but I believe it's more of offsetting the donations that we receive from the expenses. But I will defer to Cindy on that. Cindy, are you available to weigh in on that question?
Yes.
If you know the answer, I'm not sure.
Yes, you are correct, Frank, that the fund was set up not with city dollars, but to have an account to put the sponsorship money into so that we can pay expenses from the parade out of it. Expenses included things like transportation for the schools, which I guess we have always paid, having the banners done up, the planners downtown, all the expenses that were included in the parade that the sponsors, and this is not something new, this is, the sponsors have always funded the parade.
So it's cost neutral because we got major sponsorships from, I'll refer back to you, I think some significant sponsorship. Am I correct? Berks
Yes,
County.
Berks Community Foundation.
Right, there was a particular
as well as the
fund.
Parking Authority.
Yeah, I forget. I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Cindy.
So
We had Berks Community Foundation, the Parking Authority, and then we had division sponsors of the Greater Reading Chamber Alliance and Reading Area Water Authority.
So with those
So-
sponsorships, they became revenue and then we have expenses, but we did through our system and we didn't go through a 501c3. We didn't need.
That's right, because typically you'd be using somebody as a pass-through. So I
Correct.
just want to verify that creating an agency fund is the appropriate way to do this, and that we're not going to be,
Yeah.
not me, but in 6 months, we're not going to be having this back on the agenda saying, oh, this wasn't the right way. Now we have to shift these funds around again, because we don't want to have to go through that. That was one of the advantages of having an authority or having a commission or having a right. And so we've just got to be really cautious in our overview and approach to how are we managing things now that we do not have that entity anymore. So I think this is the first of many things that we're going to experience. And if we're starting out the agency fund, we want to make sure it's compliant and vested in the right way so that we can continue to do what needs to be done here.
This decision was vetted through our solicitor. He advised us on whether or not we could open this account.
The finance team was able to weigh in on our capacity to do this. So I think everything was pretty good in this case.
And so is it safe to assume that the total expense was $25,000 for the city holiday parade? Because that's pretty incredible.
I would love to say that I have all those numbers right now, but as it's only technically a day later, we're still kind of putting all those numbers together.
All right, any additional questions on that ordinance? All right, we have 3 ordinances for introduction. I'm going to try to go through them quickly. We can try to get a couple questions in, but I want to remind you guys we have to do an executive session yet. So the first ordinance is authorizing a budget transfer in the amount of $60,000 from solid waste contracted services to recycling contracted services to cover the increase in tipping fees through the end of the year. Any comments on that one? It's pretty self-explanatory.
What does that mean, Jeff?
Stan, somebody want to give Johanny a clarity on tipping fees? It's really dumping fees, I believe.
Yes, and that is the extra cost that the city incurred when we have cleanups throughout the city and that are outside of the contract itself for disposal. You're going to find this also part of the additional cleanups for the tires. We have illegal dumping that we take care of, and this is covering that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, my dog was just in the background. I apologize.
Thank you, Stan.
My pleasure.
All right, the next ordinance for introduction is authorizing a budget transfer in the amount of $12,500 within the fire department to cover anticipated fuel costs in the EMS budget. Any comments on that? If not, the final ordinance for introduction is amending the city code chapter 496. Dumpster placement with a rewrite that requires the annual permitting of permanent dumpsters and toters within the public right of way, screening of all dumpsters and toters, requiring weekly collection for such dumpsters and toters, and using any revenue realized. Give me 1 second. Any revenue realized for the expansion of the Clean City program. Any comments or questions on that item?
The administration will have a more formal presentation before council takes a vote on it. So either at the next future committee of the whole. So we'll have more details to explain what in detail what this amendment is.
Jeff,
All right.
could I ask if someone else reads this into the record? I'm not sure my voice will go.
Yeah, I'll do it tonight.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next item, well, that's the final one. All right, resolutions. Appointing Michael Gombar as the council solicitor for a 2-year term effective December 1st, and authorizing the council president to
execute the attached employment agreement.
Yep. All right, any comments or questions on that? All right, the next item is a resolution appointing Nelson De Leon to the Planning Commission. Any comments or questions on that resolution as well? All right, if not, before we go into an executive session, is there anything that's absolutely pressing that someone needs to discuss? We are already 23 minutes behind, so if there's nothing pressing, I'm going to ask that we adjourn and go into the executive, but we're going to stay on this call, clear out the room. All right, Linda, can you clear out the room just for the executive session people? And then we'll try to be quick in executive session.
Working on it right now.